I trusted him so completely that I almost threw away the most important piece of evidence I'd ever collected. Almost deleted the one recording that would save my sanity and expose the truth that had been eating me alive for months. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the moment I first heard him whispering in our kitchen at 2 a.m., thinking I was fast asleep. You know that feeling when you wake up and something just feels off? Like the air in your house has shifted, like someone's been moving through your space while you were unconscious? That's exactly what jolted me awake that Tuesday night in March. The apartment was supposed to be silent. Marcus was supposed to be next to me, breathing that deep, steady rhythm I'd grown accustomed to over our 2 years together. Instead, I heard his voice. Low, careful, almost tender in a way that made my stomach clench. I lay there in our bed, every muscle in my body rigid, straining to make out the words floating from our kitchen. The hardwood floors of our downtown apartment carried sound differently at night. Everything seemed amplified, more intimate somehow. I know, baby. I know it's hard. His voice was barely above a whisper, but I caught every syllable. Just a little longer, okay? I promise. Baby. He called me babe. Sometimes honey when he was being particularly sweet. But baby? That was new. That was different. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet silent on the cold floor. The hallway stretched ahead of me like a tunnel, and I pressed myself against the wall, my heart hammering so hard I was certain he'd hear it. Through the archway to our kitchen, I could see his silhouette backlit by the glow of his phone screen. He was leaning against our breakfast bar, the same spot where we'd shared coffee that morning, where he'd kissed my forehead and told me he loved me before heading to work. She doesn't suspect anything, he continued, and my blood turned to ice water. She's been working late on that Henderson project. Barely notices when I'm here or not. He was talking about me. I was she. Standing in my own hallway, in my own apartment, listening to my boyfriend of 2 years discuss me like I was some obstacle to be managed. I wanted to storm into that kitchen. I wanted to demand answers, to confront him right there under the harsh LED lights we'd installed together last summer. But something held me back. Some instinct told me to wait, to listen, to gather information before I made my move. Yeah, the lease is up in June, Marcus was saying. I can be out by then. Maybe sooner if I play it right. The lease. Our lease. The apartment we'd chosen together, the place where we'd talked about getting a dog, where we'd hung pictures of our families side by side on the mantel. He was planning his exit strategy, and I was apparently the last person who was supposed to know about it. I crept back to bed, my mind racing. Sleep was impossible. I stared at the ceiling, watching the shadows from passing cars sweep across the plaster, trying to make sense of what I'd heard. When Marcus finally slid back into bed 20 minutes later, I pretended to be asleep. He curved his body around mine, his arm draping across my waist in that familiar way that had always made me feel safe. Now it felt like being trapped. The next morning, I watched him over our usual breakfast of coffee and toast. He was scrolling through his phone, occasionally chuckling at something on his screen. The same Marcus who'd been whispering to another woman about leaving me just hours earlier. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. How'd you sleep? He asked without looking up. Fine, I lied. You? Like a rock. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You seem tense. Everything okay at work? The casual concern in his voice made me want to scream. Instead, I smiled and nodded, playing the role of the unsuspecting girlfriend while my world crumbled around me. That day at work was torture. I sat in my cubicle at the marketing firm, staring at campaign briefs and budget spreadsheets, but all I could think about was that phone call. Who was she? How long had this been going on? And more importantly, why was he still sleeping in my bed, eating my food, using my Netflix account while actively planning to abandon me? I found myself analyzing every interaction we'd had over the past few months. The times he'd stayed late at the gym. The weekend he'd gone to visit his college buddy in Chicago. The way he'd started putting his phone face down when we were together. Red flags that I'd dismissed as paranoia were suddenly blazing sirens. But here's the thing about gaslighting, and I didn't even know that's what it was called yet. It doesn't happen all at once. It's a slow erosion, like water wearing away stone. By the time you notice the damage, the foundation is already compromised. When I brought up the phone call that evening, Marcus looked at me with such genuine confusion that I almost believed I'd imagined the whole thing. What phone call? He was chopping vegetables for dinner, his movements casual and rhythmic. Zoe, I went to bed right after you did. I think you might have been dreaming. I heard you in the kitchen, I insisted. You were whispering to someone. He set down his knife and turned to face me fully, his expression shifting to concern. Babe, you've been stressed lately. The Henderson project has you working crazy hours. Sometimes when we're exhausted, our minds play tricks on us. The way he said it, so gentle and caring, made me doubt myself. Had I dreamed it? The memory felt so vivid, but sleep deprivation could do strange things to your perception. I'd been pulling late nights at the office, surviving on caffeine and determination. I know what I heard, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, they sounded less certain. Marcus stepped closer, cupping my face in his hands. I love you, Zoe. I'm not going anywhere. If you're feeling insecure about something, we can talk about it. But I promise you, there's no one else. There's never been anyone else. His eyes were so sincere, so full of what looked like genuine love and concern. This was the Marcus who'd held me through my grandmother's funeral, who'd surprised me with homemade soup when I had the flu, who'd spent 3 hours helping me assemble a bookshelf from IKEA without losing his temper once. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. But 3 nights later, it happened again. This time I was ready. I'd been lying awake for hours, my phone on silent next to me, the voice recording app already open. When I heard the soft creak of the bed as he got up, I forced my breathing to remain deep and even. The whispered conversation was longer this time. More detailed. More devastating. I'm trying to let her down easy, his voice drifted through the darkness. She's not a bad person. She doesn't deserve to be hurt. But I can't keep living this lie. My thumb hovered over the record button. Part of me didn't want to capture this. Part of me wanted to preserve the possibility that I was wrong, that there was some innocent explanation for what I was hearing. But I pressed record anyway. The timing has to be perfect, Marcus continued. She's got that big presentation next week. I don't want to mess with her career. Maybe after that settles down. How considerate of him, I thought bitterly. Planning his betrayal around my work schedule. I know you're frustrated, baby. I know you want to be together. But we have to be smart about this. If we do it right, everyone wins. She gets to keep her dignity, and we get to be together without all the drama. The recording captured it all. His voice, clear and unmistakable. The pet name that wasn't meant for me. The careful calculation of my emotional destruction. When he finally hung up and crept back to bed, I had 7 minutes and 34 seconds of audio that would change everything. But I didn't listen to it right away. I couldn't. The next morning, I went through the motions of our routine, making coffee while he showered, kissing him goodbye at the door like I had hundreds of times before. The phone felt heavy in my pocket, loaded with secrets and heartbreak. At work, I locked myself in a conference room and played the recording back. Hearing his voice again, admitting to living a lie, discussing me like I was some problem to be solved, made my hands shake. I had to stop the playback twice to catch my breath. But I also felt something else. Relief. Vindication. I wasn't crazy. I hadn't imagined it. My instincts had been right all along. That evening, I confronted him again. This time, I was armed with proof. We need to talk, I said as soon as he walked through the door. He must have heard something in my voice because his casual smile faltered. What's going on? You had another phone call last night. Zoe, we've been through this. You're having dreams. I recorded it. The words hung in the air between us like a blade. Marcus went very still, his face cycling through a series of expressions: confusion, realization, panic, and finally, anger. "You recorded me?" His voice was sharp now, all pretense of gentle concern gone. "What kind of person does that?" That's psychotic behavior, Zoe." And there it was. The deflection. The blame shifting. Instead of addressing what he'd said, he was attacking me for having the audacity to document his betrayal. "Play it," I said, holding up my phone. "I'm not going to validate this paranoid behavior by." "Play it, Marcus. Or I will." The silence stretched between us. I could see him calculating, trying to figure out how to spin this, how to make me the villain in a story where he was cheating on me with another woman. Finally, he sank onto our couch, the same couch where we'd watched movies together, where he'd told me he loved me for the first time. "It's not what you think," he said. "Then explain it to me." It's complicated." "Uncomplicate it." He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd once found endearing. She's from before. Before us. We have history. History that involves her calling you at 2 a.m. and you making plans to leave me? She's been going through a rough time. Her mom died last year, and she's been struggling. She needed someone to talk to. Even now, even caught red-handed, he was trying to manipulate me. Trying to make his emotional affair sound like charity work. "Cut the crap, Marcus. I heard what you said. About the lease. About letting me down easy. About living a lie." His shoulders sagged. For a moment, he looked like the boy I'd fallen in love with, vulnerable and lost. Then he straightened, and I saw something cold slide across his features. "Fine," he said. "You want the truth? Here's the truth. I'm not happy. I haven't been happy for months. But I didn't know how to tell you because you're so intense about everything. You make mountains out of molehills. You catastrophize. I knew if I tried to have a normal conversation about our relationship, you'd turn it into some big dramatic thing." The gaslighting was masterful. He was rewriting our entire relationship, painting me as the unstable one, the one who couldn't handle adult conversations. Making his betrayal my fault. "So you decided to cheat instead?" "I didn't cheat. I talked to someone. Someone who understands me. Someone who doesn't analyze every word I say looking for hidden meaning. Someone you call baby while you're planning to leave me. Sarah and I have been friends since college. We dated briefly back then. She knows me better than anyone. Sarah. Now she had a name. Now she was real. Are you in love with her?" The question hung in the air. Marcus looked at me, and for a moment, I saw something that might have been regret. But then he nodded. Yes. That single word felt like a physical blow. 2 years of my life, reduced to a single syllable. All those plans we'd made, all those lazy Sunday mornings, all those conversations about the future, and he'd been in love with someone else. "How long?" I asked. "It doesn't matter. It matters to me. She reached out a few months ago. After her mom died. We started talking again, and things just developed naturally. Naturally. Like I was some kind of obstacle to the natural order of things." "So what now?" I asked. "You move out, move in with Sarah, and we pretend like the last 2 years never happened?" I hoped we could be mature about this. Remain friends. You're a good person, Zoe. You deserve someone who can love you the way you need to be loved. The condescension in his voice was breathtaking. He was framing his betrayal as a favor to me, like he was setting me free to find real love while he ran off with his college sweetheart. "Get out," I said. "Zoe, let's talk about this like adults. Get out of my apartment. Now. Technically, it's our apartment. Both our names are on the lease. Then I'll leave. But I'm not spending another night under the same roof as you." I packed a bag while he stood in the doorway, still trying to convince me that he'd been the considerate one, that he'd been trying to protect my feelings. Every word out of his mouth made me angrier, but also more determined. I stayed at my sister's place that night, playing the recording over and over. Emma listened to it with her mouth hanging open, her anger building with each replayed second. "This is incredible," she said. "Not incredible good, obviously. Incredible terrible. But Zoe, you have to understand what this is. This is emotional abuse. This is gaslighting. He's been making you question your own reality." That was the first time I heard the term. Gaslighting. Named after an old movie where a husband systematically manipulates his wife into thinking she's going insane. It was exactly what Marcus had been doing to me, making me doubt my own perceptions, my own memories, my own sanity. "You should post this," Emma said. "Post what?" "The recording. Make it public. Let people hear what gaslighting actually sounds like." I laughed, but it came out bitter. "I can't post a private recording of my boyfriend online. That's revenge stuff." "Is it? Or is it education? How many other women are going through exactly what you're going through? How many other people are being told they're crazy when they know something's wrong?" The idea terrified me. Making my private pain public, opening myself up to judgment and criticism. But it also sparked something in me. A sense of purpose, maybe. A way to turn my betrayal into something meaningful. I spent the weekend thinking about it. Marcus texted me a few times, apologizing for how things had gone down, asking if we could talk. I didn't respond. I was done being manipulated. Monday morning, I made a decision. I created a new social media account, no personal information, just a simple username, TruthTeller2024. I uploaded the recording with a simple caption, "For everyone who's been told they're imagining things. You're not crazy. Trust your instincts." I expected maybe a few dozen listens. Maybe some supportive comments from friends who stumbled across it. What I got was a viral explosion that changed my life. Within hours, the recording had thousands of plays. The comments section filled with stories from people who'd experienced similar situations. Women and men sharing their own experiences of being gaslit, of being told they were crazy for noticing obvious red flags, of being made to doubt their own reality. The story grew legs. Online publications picked it up. Relationship experts started referencing it in articles about emotional abuse. The recording became a teaching tool, a perfect example of how gaslighting works in real time. But it also became something else. It became a rallying cry for people who'd been silenced, who'd been told their feelings didn't matter, who'd been made to feel like they were losing their minds. Marcus tried to do damage control. He posted his own response, painting me as a vindictive ex who'd violated his privacy. He tried to spin the narrative, to make himself the victim of my unstable behavior. But the recording spoke for itself. His voice, his words, his calculated manipulation. No amount of after-the-fact explanation could change what people heard with their own ears. The response was overwhelming. I started getting messages from people thanking me for sharing their truth. Therapists reached out, asking if they could use the recording in their practices. Domestic violence organizations wanted to include it in their educational materials. I also heard from Sarah. She'd seen the viral post and realized that Marcus had been lying to her too. He'd told her I was emotionally abusive, that he was trapped in a toxic relationship, that he was afraid to leave because of how I'd react. The recording showed her the truth, that he was perfectly capable of calculated deception, that he'd been playing both of us. She left him before he could leave me. There was some poetic justice in that, I suppose. The attention was intense and sometimes overwhelming. There were supportive comments, but also harsh criticism. Some people accused me of being vindictive, of destroying a man's reputation over a relationship that simply wasn't working. Others questioned my motives, wondering if I was just seeking attention or trying to get revenge. But for every negative comment, there were 10 positive ones. People sharing their own stories of gaslighting, thanking me for giving them a name for what they'd experienced, telling me that hearing the recording had given them the courage to leave their own toxic situations. A few months later, I got a message that made everything worthwhile. It was from a woman named Jessica who'd been in an emotionally abusive marriage for 8 years. She'd stumbled across my recording during a particularly dark period when her husband had convinced her that her concerns about his behavior were signs of her own mental instability. "Your recording saved my life," she wrote. "Not literally, but it saved my sanity. It showed me that I wasn't crazy, that my instincts were right, that I deserved better." I left him 2 weeks after hearing it. "I'm in therapy now, rebuilding my sense of self, but I'm free. Thank you for being brave enough to share your truth." That message made every criticism, every nasty comment, every moment of doubt worth it. I'd turned my personal betrayal into something that helped others. I'd transformed my pain into purpose. The recording continued to circulate, becoming part of a larger conversation about emotional abuse and gaslighting. It was featured in podcasts, discussed in therapy sessions, and included in educational materials about healthy relationships. Marcus eventually moved to another city, probably to escape the attention. I heard through mutual friends that he'd tried to reconcile with Sarah, but she'd seen through his manipulation tactics. Apparently, once you recognize gaslighting for what it is, it's hard to be fooled by it again. As for me, I stayed in our apartment. I kept the lease, redecorated the space, made it mine. I started seeing a therapist who specialized in emotional abuse recovery. I learned about trauma bonding, about love bombing, about all the subtle ways manipulative people undermine their victims' sense of reality. I also learned about my own patterns. Why I'd been drawn to someone like Marcus, why I'd doubted myself even when my instincts were screaming warnings. Recovery wasn't just about recognizing his manipulation, it was about understanding my own vulnerability to it. The viral recording opened doors I never could have imagined. I was invited to speak at conferences about domestic violence awareness. I started a blog about recognizing and recovering from emotional abuse. I even wrote a book, using my experience as a starting point for a broader discussion about gaslighting and its effects. But perhaps most importantly, I learned to trust myself again. That recording wasn't just evidence of Marcus's betrayal, it was proof that my instincts were sound, that my perceptions were valid, that I wasn't the unstable, paranoid person he'd tried to make me believe I was. The comments on that original post have now reached into the tens of thousands. People from all over the world sharing their stories, supporting each other, finding strength in shared experience. What started as my private heartbreak became a public resource, a tool for healing and education. Sometimes people ask me if I regret posting it. If I wish I'd handled things differently, kept my private pain private. The answer is no. Not for a second. That recording exposed more than Marcus's betrayal. It exposed the insidious nature of gaslighting, showed people what it sounds like when someone systematically undermines your reality. It gave a voice to everyone who's ever been told they're crazy for noticing obvious lies, for trusting their instincts, for refusing to accept someone else's version of their own experience. Every person who's reached out to thank me, every story of someone finding the courage to leave a toxic situation, every moment of recognition when someone realizes they're not alone in their experience, makes sharing that recording one of the best decisions I've ever made. Marcus thought he was so clever, so careful in his manipulation. He never imagined that his whispered conversations would become a masterclass in gaslighting, that his private betrayal would become public education. He underestimated the power of truth, the relief people feel when they finally have proof that their reality is valid. The recording is still out there, still helping people recognize manipulation when they see it. Still giving people permission to trust their instincts, to believe their own experiences, to refuse to be gaslit into submission. And every time someone shares their own story in the comments, every time someone says, "This helped me realize I wasn't crazy," I'm reminded that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply tell the truth. The most painful betrayals can become the most meaningful contributions. Sometimes you have to record the lies to reveal the truth. Sometimes you have to make your private pain public to help others heal their own wounds. That 7-minute recording changed everything for me. It ended a toxic relationship, exposed a master manipulator, and launched a new chapter of my life dedicated to helping others recognize and escape emotional abuse. But most importantly, it gave me back my voice. It proved that I could trust myself, that my perceptions were valid, that I deserved better than being gaslit and manipulated. If you're reading this and something resonates, if you recognize yourself in my story, if you've been told you're crazy for noticing things that don't add up, please know that you're not alone. Your instincts are probably right. Your reality is valid. You deserve to be heard, believed, and treated with respect. Trust yourself. Record the truth when you need to. And never let anyone convince you that your reality isn't real. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've experienced something similar, share it in the comments. Sometimes the most healing thing we can do is break the silence together. Hit subscribe if this helped you see something more clearly. Sometimes the truth is the most powerful thing we can share.